Okay, as this loads up, we're going to be looking at Gilgamesh today. Gilgamesh is a very cool old story. We're going to talk about it here for a little bit. Now, Gilgamesh. Before we start, okay, get out a piece of paper. I do want you taking notes using the outline format that I gave you guys yesterday. And I just want you to take notes on the story, not the historical aspects of the story itself. Okay, Gilgamesh is the world's oldest superhero. Um, his story is over 4,000 years old. It's written in different languages. But this it typically comes from 12 tablets. And the tablets look like this clay one right here, where somebody written it out on clay in cuneiform. Now, cuneiform is where they take a wedge or a reed, and as they cut the reed, they will poke that into the clay for the letters. It's a wedge-shaped alphabet. May not be an alphabet, may be more of an icon language like Chinese. I have to look that up. But anyhow, cuneiform is what they wrote out Gilgamesh in. Now, what is fascinating is they did find this, what they call the Library of Nineveh, which has thousands of documents on clay tablets from 4,000 years ago. Gilgamesh is one of those things that they have. But Enheduanna, she was the world's first author. She wrote some things. She was the high priestess for one of the temples. Her dad, I believe, was Sargon the Great. And then they also have these other tablets where kids were writing homework, all this stuff. So we have a lot of information that comes from ancient Sumeria, which is fascinating because that just brings their world to life for us, and we can look back at their life. But Gilgamesh is our first movie, our first action hero person that we encounter in the ancient world. Now, here's where I want you to take notes. Okay, I'll try to expand on it. And I number the pages because I don't want you to take notes on the whole presentation. Focus in on just one or two of these things. And so you might be able to take your notes or do your project, your assignment, just based on like the first bullet point. Okay. But I'll let you guys decide how you want to do that. Okay, Gilgamesh. He is a fascinating person. He was probably a real king to begin with. He ruled the city of Uruk, U-R-U-K, in southern Iraq. He was 2/3 God, 1/3 human. And he was a terrible king. He was not a good king at all. The people hated him. In fact, they prayed to the gods to send someone down who could compete with Gilgamesh, because what Gilgamesh is doing is he was just beating up everybody. He didn't care for his subjects. He didn't treat them well. He was just very arrogant, very narcissistic, focused on himself, and didn't worry about what other people were saying or doing. And so the gods created this person named Enkidu. And Enkidu was a wild man. He was a naked wild man out running the woods with the wild animals. And as he was doing that, he actually got tracked down by a temple priestess, and she tamed him. She became his wife. And so Enkidu was settled down. And that's kind of a metaphor for life. As we're young, we do crazy stuff. We run around, we don't take baths, and we, just do whatever we want. But as we get older, we might find a love interest or someone that we want to impress. And so we settle down. We start taking baths. We start focusing in on other things that might be more important. But Enkidu moves to town because he is now settled. And so in his settled nature, he is just part of the community. Okay. Now, Gilgamesh, the story goes on that Gilgamesh went on to terrorize his people again. And this time, Enkidu stood up to him. Enkidu went, "Nope, stop. You can't do this." And this really enrages Gilgamesh, and they get this huge fight, an epic battle. And so they battle all around, and eventually Gilgamesh wins the fight. But he follows Enkidu's advice. Enkidu's going, "Stop picking on your people. Let's just be good guys." And so Gilgamesh doesn't terrorize his people anymore. Just him and Enkidu that go off and do these deeds. Um, and at this point, Nin's son, I think it is Gilgamesh's mom, adopts Enkidu as her son. And so they're brothers, essentially. Okay. Now, in the story, several years pass, and Gilgamesh is sitting around and he's bored. And he comes to Gilgamesh or Enkidu and says, "Hey, I got a great idea. Let's go off to the cedar forest up the river and let's kill Humbaba, the forest guardian." Humbaba is a demon slash god. Now, in Mesopotamian mythology, gods and demons, not a lot of difference. Okay. You can have gods who are malicious, who want to do bad things to people, and you can have demons who are beneficial that want to help people out. Um, and one's not associated with the devil or God, but they are just demons and gods, almost like lucky charms. I might have a lucky charm that protects me, and it is neither a god nor a demon. Okay, it's just what it is. Now, Humbaba is this creature that guards the forest, and so Enkidu and Gilgamesh go up there, um, and Humbaba has, I think, the head of a lion, the talons of an eagle, and he has like snake skin. He's just a wild looking guy. And his roar is enough to scare people to death. But as Enkidu and Gilgamesh near the forest, they have these dreams about how bad it's going to be. But Enkidu translates the dreams and say, no, this is actually a good omen because this is what's going to happen. As they get into the fight, or as they get up there, they call Humbaba out, and they actually have to face off against his 7 auras, or 7 layers of armor. So they can't just kill Humbaba outright. They first have to kill his auras. And it kind of reminds me of Harry Potter and the Horcruxes that Voldemort had. Okay, you have to kill the 7 layers to get to the only one that's left. Now, eventually they get into the battle. They are fighting, and I believe Humbaba asks for mercy, and Gilgamesh chops his head off. Okay, they're not too bright. Now this offends the gods because Humbaba was one of the demons that guarded the forest, and Enkidu and Gilgamesh just go out there and kill him. Now, and I in the fight, it's kind of interesting to hear or see because I think at one point Enkidu tells Gilgamesh where to stab Humbaba because they're in the middle of a battle and it's going back and forth. And eventually, Enkidu says, "Hey, right here, stab him now," and they do it. Now, when they get done with that battle, they chop down the giant cedar forest and they sail back down there to Uruk with these big cedar trees to build the gates of the city with. Now, another story that happens, another tablet. Now, think I told you there's 12 tablets. And so these different tablets have different stories of Enkidu and Gilgamesh. But Ishtar, the goddess, notices Gilgamesh and she goes, "I like this guy. I want to marry him." And she proposes marriage to Gilgamesh, but he goes, "No." And because he knows that every guy she's ever been married to is dead. And he doesn't want to be one of the guys that ends up dead. And so he says, "No, you might be beautiful. You might be a goddess of love, but at the same time, not worth it. I don't want to die." And so she's offended and she goes home to her dad. And I forget her dad's name, but she says, "Dad, Gilgamesh is a jerk. Can I take the bull of heaven down and kill him?" And so she gets the bull of heaven and brings him in to fight Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Now, this battle is kind of interesting too, because as you describe it, Gilgamesh and the bull are pushing each other back and forth, and people are getting trampled underneath. Uh, and it's crazy battle. Eventually, Enkidu and Gilgamesh kill the bull of heaven. And Enkidu takes the hindquarters of the bull and throws it at Ishtar and smacks her in the face. And now she's really ticked off. And she comes back and to her dad and says, "Dad, these guys are jerks. Can I get the army of the dead released on them?" As far as I know, she was not able to release the army of the dead, but that is the first zombie attack, zombie apocalypse in ancient history. And so um, she doesn't get the army of the dead, but she does curse Enkidu. And the gods decide to kill Enkidu, to let him die because he um, killed Humbaba and um, the Bull of Heaven. Now, as let me get my picture off to the side. And so Enkidu does start to get a little sick, and eventually he just kind of withers up and dies. Now, his death is devastating to Gilgamesh because they are really good friends. Okay, and so Gilgamesh talks about him setting by Enkidu's side for 7 days. He will not leave Enkidu's side. Eventually, his body starts to rot and decay, so they have to bury him. But Gilgamesh orders all his people to mourn Enkidu, and they build statues to him, and they honor Enkidu and his death. Now, for quite a while after that, Gilgamesh mopes. Okay, he kind of loses all his purpose. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he determines to become immortal. Okay, but there's only one person who's immortal in this time frame. It's called the guy named Utnapishtim. Now, last time we talked about Utnapishtim, he is the Mesopotamian guy who survived the floods, and he's the one that the gods gave immortality to because he offered them the sacrifice. And so he has to go off on this quest to find Utnapishtim. He travels all around the world. Eventually, he goes out west to a place called Mount Mushu. Now, Mount Mushu is guarded by the Scorpion people. The Scorpion people, there's this, so they guard the western horizon and the eastern horizon. But as he makes it past the Scorpion people, he has to go through a tunnel from one side of the earth to the other side of the earth where the sun rises. Okay, now this tunnel is where the sun sets. The sun will travel through a tunnel in the earth to the other side of the earth to rise again. And so he has to run through there and beat the sun. Otherwise, he'll get burned up. And so the sun does chase Gilgamesh through the tunnel. Eventually, he comes out and he enters this land that is full of gems and strange colors and just fascinating. Um, let's see, he approaches this one woman who sells him wine, and he figures out from her that he has to go see this guy named Urshanabi. Now, Urshanabi is the man who is a ferry boat captain, and he will pilot people across the waters of death from one side, probably the side of the living, to the side of the dead. Very similar to, I think, the river Styx in Greek mythology, where we have a ferryman who will, take the dead to the afterlife or to the underworld. Now, Gilgamesh is not the brightest guy because when he meets Urshanabi, he sees these stone pillars around him and he thinks they're giants about to attack him. And so Gilgamesh goes and he destroys all these stone pillars. And then he goes to Urshanabi and says, "Okay, I need you to take me to see Utnapishtim." And Urshanabi goes, "I would love to, but those stone pillars you killed, though, that was the way I would get across the waters of death. So I don't know how I'm going to do it." Eventually, he convinces Gilgamesh the only way to do it is for Gilgamesh to go cut down 120 trees and build punting poles out of them because you cannot touch the waters of death because it'll kill you. I believe that each punting pole is left behind as they go through. So he does that. Now, when he gets to a place called Dilmun is this island where Utnapishtim lives. He approaches Utnapishtim, and Utnapishtim goes, "Yeah, but you don't really want to live forever. That's right. You want to live for a while, then die." But Gilgamesh convinces him that, hey, no, I do want to live forever. And so Utnapishtim gives him a test. He says, if you can stay awake for 7 nights and 6 days, I'll give you the keys to it. And so Gilgamesh says, okay, no problem. And he sits down and falls asleep. And while he's asleep, Utnapishtim lays out loaves of bread next to him each day. And so he has 7 days of bread when he wakes up, laying there in different forms of decay. And so he knows that he's been there for 7 days. Um, but he convinces Utnapishtim that he can do this. And so Utnapishtim says, okay, let me tell you how to do it. If you go to this one spot, dive to the bottom of the ocean and pick a plant and bring that plant back, you'll live forever. So he goes out there, he picks this plant. Some people think it's coral. He harvests the plant and brings it back, but before he gets back all the way, he decides to take a bath. So he sets the plant down, he jumps in, takes a bath, and while he's in the pool taking a bath, a snake comes around and eats the piece of plant that he had harvested, and that might be why the snake appears to be immortal and sheds its skin. But Gilgamesh realizes that, hey, this is it. Um, he determines not to go back and get another piece of the plant. And so he determines he's going to go back home and live out his life. He's going to be mortal. And as he returns to Uruk, he becomes a great king because he's more sensitive to his people. He's lived his life. He's kind of a fascinating guy. Okay. I crammed those 12 tablets down into 4 pages. Here we go. One thing that is fascinating when it comes to um, myths and heroes. Okay, we're all heroes struggling to accomplish our own adventure. Okay, right now we're in the adventure of 2020, the coronavirus. Okay, and that's our adventure right now. Okay, as human beings, we engage in a series of struggles to develop as individuals and to find our place. Um, okay, we all have different struggles that we face, but they can also be related to other people. Um, uh, bu- 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 Okay, beyond that, we long for wisdom. We want to understand the universe and the significance of our role in it. One thing that I've read is that people will find meaning in very many things. Our minds are good at deciphering meaning, even when there may not be meaning to it. That's what my philosophy tells us. We can find patterns where the patterns may not be, but we know how to look for patterns and establish those patterns. Say, nope, this really is the pattern. Um, so heroes, people that go through, they do teach us a lot about life. Now, here's what you guys get to do. From your notes, I want you to draw a picture of Gilgamesh. It can be a cartoon picture, one of Gilgamesh's adventures. And you can really focus in on just a couple of sentences too. But include details in your drawing that I gave you in the lecture or that story. Try to push it. Okay. Now take a picture of your drawing and turn in your picture. Okay. Now, if you do not know how to take a picture, how to take a picture with your Chromebook, one, you come down here. If I hit exit here and I come down to the bottom page, this is your launcher. Hit launcher, go to camera. Once you get that pulled up, you can snap a picture. Okay. Now, I do have a picture in there. If I go into my pictures, I should be able to find it. Or if you have that up, you can just do a screenshot of it and put that onto your slide. Okay, turn that in. Any questions? Shoot me an email. Take care.